What's something wrong?
It was not very smooth. Okay, you got 3 bars.
All right. I made sure to double and triple check the volume button this time so that there's not an echo like the last couple weeks. Is it coming through the volume? Okay. A couple of hunters chartered a plane to fly into the Canadian wilderness. 2 weeks later, when the pilot came to pick them up, he saw the 2 animals that they had bagged and said, "I told you fellows I can only take you and 1 moose. You'll have to leave the other one behind." "But we did it last year in a plane this size," protested one of the hunters. "And the other pilot let us take 2 moose." "Well, okay," said the pilot. "If you did it before, I guess we can do it again." So the 2 moose and the hunters were loaded into the plane and the plane took off. Because of the heavy weight, it rose with difficulty and was unable to clear an obstructing hill. After the crash, the men climbed out and looked around. One hunter said to the other, "Where are we anyway?" His companion surveyed the scene. "I think we got about a half a mile farther than we got last year." The story illustrates the importance of truth. It's humorous, but it illustrates the importance of telling the truth. Yeah, they may have done it last year, but we didn't get very far. And that's what this morning is about the truth. The importance of righteousness. That here, truth. Truth is important. Not just speaking the truth, but living the truth. And so first this morning is the importance of righteousness. The importance of righteousness. And look at verse 23 with me. "These also are sayings of the wise. To show partiality and judgment is not good." Even though these 6 next wise sayings are not included in the previous list of 30, these are also wise sayings. You having trouble with the oh. All right. So even though it's not part of the 30, or even he could have said 36, these are also wise sayings. And this is not just for those who are starting out in wisdom. That is a new beginner and a new believer who wants to learn what it means to be wise and to live for the Lord and to walk in His ways and to walk in truth. But they're meant for those who are already wise believers who are maturing and want to become wiser, because the reality is that none of us could ever say, "I am perfectly mature and perfectly wise on this side of heaven, and so I need to stop growing." No, this is for believers no matter what stage of maturity you're at and how long that you've been a Christian. And so no matter how mature you become in your walk in the Lord, you still need to grow in wisdom. And so we're going to look at the verse 23 again. To show partiality and judgment is not good. Partiality is sin. The sin of partiality. See, rulers, judges have to be impartial. They have to be. And Proverbs has much to say about justice. And it needs to be righteous judgments. Because for by wisdom, when a ruler is wise, he can be just. Proverbs 8:15 says, "For by me kings reign and rulers decree justice." And so wisdom. But if a ruler steers away from that and judges steer away from and stay away from wisdom, then there's going to be problems. But if they're wise, they're going to see that truth is important in justice, because you cannot have false witnesses. There's devastating consequences, especially when you have false witnesses when somebody is going to get the death penalty. It has devastating consequences, and we see that. How many times have we seen somebody, even in our own country, have been released because somebody lied on the witness stand? For one reason or another, because they were afraid of the person that they would have been testifying against if they would have told the truth. Exodus 20:16, "You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor." Not to lie. Proverbs 18:5, because I should back up for a moment. Proverbs 24:23 is not the first time that partiality has been mentioned. Proverbs 18:5 says, "To show partiality to the wicked is not good, nor to thrust aside the righteous in judgment." To show partiality to anyone for any reason perverts justice. Justice is to be blind, is to look at the facts of the case. What is the truth? It doesn't matter who the person is. It doesn't matter how powerful they are. It doesn't matter how much or little money they have. It doesn't matter what their job is or what job title it is. It doesn't matter how little or how much education they have. It doesn't matter what shade of the skin color they have. It doesn't matter if they're a foreigner or a citizen of the nation. It doesn't matter if they're homeless or not. None of those things are being taken into consideration. It's what is the truth. Because the government's responsibility by God is to punish evildoers and to promote righteousness and protect the innocent. Romans 13:3-4, "For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Would you have no fear of the one who is in authority? Then do what is good, and you receive his approval. For he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. For he is a servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer." See, if somebody's guilty, they're to be punished. And they're to be punished accordingly. That means prison sentences should be the same for rich, poor, educated, uneducated, and so on. All those factors I mentioned that should not be taken into account, that means everybody should get the same sentence for the same crime, no matter who they are. And if somebody's innocent, they're innocent. And so if you end up showing partiality in judgments and cases, you turn justice on its head, and the Bible condemns that. Condemns that the wicked go free, the righteous have their rights violated, deprive people of justice. I mean, Proverbs 18:5 in the ESV says this is not good to be partial to the wicked or deprive the righteous of justice. I mean, Leviticus, God told judges that they would be impartial. And God expects, it wasn't just for Jewish Israel judges. All judges are to be. Leviticus 19:15, you shall do no injustice in judgment. You shall not be partial to the poor, nor defer to the great, but you are to judge your neighbor fairly. Proverbs 17:15 says, he who justifies the wicked and he who condemns the righteous, both of them are like an abomination of the Lord. Abomination. The person who condemns the righteous, the person who justifies the wicked, it says an abomination. Word abomination, that's the strongest word for God's hatred of sin. We've seen that several times in Proverbs. We see that in other places in Scripture where God absolutely hates, detests. The strongest word of his hatred for that sin is detestable. It disgusts the Lord. And so justice is to be impartial, and that's the way it should be. But because of sin, there are times that the rich and powerful are allowed to walk free because who they are, and the wicked because of wicked judges. Or if they're sentenced, they'll receive a shorter sentence, while someone who is poor or a different skin color, a different nationality, will receive a harsher sentence for committing a crime that is less severe. That's all wickedness. The New Testament teaches that it's not just the courts that are to be impartial. We are to be impartial in any situation. James 2:1 through 10. James 2:1 through 9 speak of that. My brethren, do not hold your faith in our glorious Jesus Christ with an attitude of personal favoritism. For if a man comes to your assembly with a gold ring and dressed in fine clothes, and there also comes in a poor man in dirty clothes, and you pay special attention to the one who is wearing the fine clothes, and say, you sit here in a good place, and you say to the poor man, you stand over there, or sit down by my footstool, have you not made distinctions among yourselves and become judges with evil motives? Listen, my beloved brethren, did not God choose the poor of this world to be rich in faith and heirs of the kingdom which he promised to those who love him? But you have dishonored the poor man. Is it not the rich man who press you and personally drag you into the court? Do they not blaspheme the fair name by which you have been called? If, however, you are fulfilling the royal law according to the Scriptures, you shall love your neighbor as yourself, you are doing well. But if you show partiality, you are committing sin and are convicted by the law as transgressors. See, even in our Christian life, we're not to commit the sin of partiality, favoritism. Your basis for being impartial is because God is impartial. Deuteronomy 10:17, for the Lord your God is a God of gods and Lord of lords, the great, the mighty, and the awesome God who is not partial and takes no bribe. And so God is impartial. We're to be impartial. That means we don't make judgments on people based on how they dress, or the way they look, or because of their education, or because of their skin color, and all these other factors. Because you remember, if you remember several years ago, we looked at wokeness and that what they would call racism, the Bible calls partiality. The sin of partiality, that is judgment on just because of somebody on some external factor, as stupid as the shade of somebody's skin color. And so we have to be careful in our judgments upon people. We don't look down upon people. We don't make an unrighteous judgment. And so we have to be careful. And not only is it being impartial important to righteousness and truth, but not calling evil good as well. Evil is not to be called good. It is not to be called good at all. Proverbs 24:24, he who says to the wicked, you are righteous. What does the Bible say? People will curse him. Nations will abhor him. It is the job of governments, as established, to punish the wicked and protect the innocent. And so they have to be impartial. Romans 13:4, for as a minister of God to you for good, but if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword for nothing. For as a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil. God has established authority. God has put a ruler. God has put judges in their positions. And so when they make a decision, they're actually speaking in God's name. If they declare a guilty person innocent, the Bible says that's wickedness. It doesn't matter if it's because of favoritism or partiality or because of a bribe or any other reason. It's evil. Even if it's a relative, God will judge him for that. And people who love righteousness will hate that. Girard D. Koning said this, a judge is not to say, he said this about judges, is not to say to a wicked person, you're righteous. If he does, then not only will God judge him, but he will also make the anger of the people come upon him. It is not just simply about an opinion, nor just someone who is saying this. Here we have someone who is speaking justice in public and does it in the name of God. This is the most serious offense of justice and also extreme dishonor to the judge of the whole earth. A judge who is partial in such a way that leads him to make such a legal decision will be cursed and abhorred by everyone all over the earth. And so look at verse 25 with me. But to those who rebuke the wicked will be a delight, and a good blessing will come upon them. So judges who pervert justice for one reason or another, they're going to be abhorred, hated, cursed. But those who punish evil and uphold justice will have the opposite done to them. They have God's blessing. The people will bless them. And so because of this, we need to pray for those who are in position of authority that they would do what is right. Judges would make righteous decisions. That they would do what is right and not be afraid. That the laws would be passed that are righteous. That the wicked would be condemned and the innocent would be protected and not have their rights violated. We need to be praying for them. But also, this applies to churches as well, in many different ways, and one of them is that we have to speak the truth. Sin has to be called sin. We can't go around like some are that people are okay in their sin. It's a lie. To tell somebody they're okay when they're not is not right. To call evil good and good evil brings God's judgment upon you, greatly upon you. And so we see the importance of righteousness and judgment, and that doing was right. And then second this morning, the second wise saying of more wise sayings is don't be afraid to speak the truth. He kisses the lips who gives a right answer. Proverbs 24:26. Because of our culture, we think of kissing our lips, we think of that as romantic. Or exclusively romantic, I should say. And there are kisses between a husband and wife that are romantic. Or even between those who are dating. It's meant romantic. But however, and even today in many cultures, still today, and especially in ancient times, kissing was not limited to a romantic kiss. A kiss would be welcomed when it is heartfelt and there is respect. A kiss was to show honor, respect, and friendship. A kiss was exchanged between even family members in the Bible. When Esau and Jacob were reunited, they kissed. Doesn't mean a kiss on the lips necessarily, but a kiss on the cheek or the forehead. When Joseph revealed himself to his brothers, after all these years, he kissed every one of them. Genesis 45:15, he kissed all his brothers and wept on them. And afterward his brothers talked with him. When David was saying goodbye to Jonathan, because David had Jonathan find out if it was Saul's intention to kill him. That Jonathan didn't believe. Jonathan thought that his dad would tell him everything. But he didn't, because he knew of Jonathan's friendship. And so if you remember that they had that boy, well, Jonathan would shoot the arrow, and if he told him that's over there, that meant that David was to flee, and if it meant it was over this place, then that meant everything was safe. And so it turned out that it was not safe. And so Jonathan had the boy gather the arrow and the bow and leave. And then David came and they said goodbye. 1 Samuel 20, verse 41, when the lad was gone, David rose from the south side and fell on his face to the ground and bowed 3 times, and they kissed each other and wept together. But David wept the more. Even Peter and Paul instructed Christians to greet each other with a kiss. Paul calls it a holy kiss. But there's multiple passages where he talks about greet one another with a holy kiss. 1 Corinthians 16:20 is one of those. All the brethren greet you. Greet one another with a holy kiss. What he meant by is that's a sign of our relationship as a family because of Christ, of affection and love. That here that we show genuine love for one another. Today, that has been replaced with a handshake or a hug, or we might be really excited to see that person. That is expression. And so just as expression of love between friends, family, and Christians is appreciated, the truth is appreciated. Because look at verse 26 again. He kisses the lips who gives a right answer. He kisses the lips who gives a right answer. No one appreciates being lied to. But it seems that we're constantly being lied to. The media constantly lying to us. It's one of the reasons why I haven't watched a lot of news in I think about 9 years. Our government lies to us. Our politicians lie to us. They make campaign promises that they know they're not going to be keeping. People lie to one another. Why? Why do people lie? Sometimes it's because we don't want to disappoint people, or we don't want to offend them. Some of those reasons. Fear, control of the situation, because we don't want people to think differently about us. We don't want to get in trouble. Those are some of the reasons why people lie. Think about, how does that make you feel when you're lied to? Well, you don't appreciate that. You feel hurt. You would see it as betrayal. Or you wouldn't trust them. Or you would not trust them as much as you did. The truth is important and essential to the Christian life. Because as Christians, we're called to speak the truth. Ephesians 4:25 says, therefore, laying aside falsehood, speak truth each one of you with his neighbor, for we are members of one another.